the greatest fights in all of MHA.
Let's go. We're going
Deku versus
2 for
Muscular.
2,
Listen,
2
I've
for
said
5,
multiple
5 for
times that
2.
this is one
Let's
of,
go.
if not my favorite fight in all of MHA, but I
It was
understand
so
it's not
fucking
the
cool,
best fight in all of
man.
MHA. Mostly maybe because I believe season 3 is probably the best season of MHA, but I also just love
That's a pretty strong thing to say, Nick. I don't know if I agree with you on that. This season 4, you know. Welcome back to SamaReacts. It's your boy Marshall Sama, and in today's video we're gonna be reacting to the best fights ranked and explained. More specifically, the best fights from My Hero Academia. Now, I'm a big My Hero fan, and I've been watching the Weeb Commander's videos for a while. I started watching his channel when I was watching his main channel, NC Hammer, where he posts a lot more Naruto and Boruto content, because I love Boruto as well. So if you guys like Naruto and Boruto and want to check out his Boruto content as well, I'll link his channel in the description and all that. But in this video, he's ranked some of the best fights in My Hero, and I want to see if I agree with this list, because there's different opinions on different fights, you know. So I want to see where he puts some fights and exactly what kind of scale that he was using to rank the fights, and if he was talking about importance, or you know, the weight, or just the animation or the choreography. So those are the things that I bet he's going to explain, because he always does in the video. So yeah, we can get into the reaction.
There's no more fights, which means the days of some of the most gorgeously animated fight sequences or the most sliding PNGs of all time.
The last season of MHA getting all episodes above 9.0, bro, that's impressive. That's so fucking impressive. I'm really proud of the show and everybody that was involved. Shout out to the team that was working on My Hero. Let me just increase the quality. And yeah, can continue.
Are behind us, and thus I figured, as we've now seen every fight we're ever going to see from the MHA universe animated, there's never been a better time to sit down and talk about which amongst them was the best. See, because while yes, different seasons of MHA delivered different levels of quality, over the course of the 150 plus episodes we've gotten from MHA, we have been served some incredible fights. Almost too many to count, and definitely too many to fit into a top 10 list that people aren't gonna scream at me about. And yet, here are—
Let me see. Before we actually get into Nick's, fuck, is he gonna be talking about the movies too, or is it just specifically the show? Let me get a little bit more information, and then I want to give my own prediction of the list.
Let's dive directly into the top 10 greatest fights in My Hero Academia, ranked and explained. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page,
channel,
hit that note bell. And if you're looking for one additional Nick video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We just finished Gaara versus Rock Lee, and it's—
And congratulations on the engagement, man. I don't think he's gonna watch this video, but in case he does, Nick just got engaged. He said that a few videos ago, so congrats, man. Congrats.
Honestly, better than I remember. So before we dive into this top 10, I want to lay down some ground rules, and also throw out some honorable mentions. Now, obviously, ranking the greatest fights in a show is going to be a subjective topic, and therefore the subjective criteria that I'm going to use to rank these fights is really going to fall into 3 categories: emotional weight, plot relevance, and animation/choreography. Yeah, over the course of MHA, there is a ton of emotionally weighty fights. However, some of those emotionally weighty fights happen during the bad animation seasons. And thus, unfortunately, some of those more emotionally impactful and important fights could feel as though they fall short of less important fights, because for some reason, those less important fights just got better animation. And while that might sound like shallow criteria, you're lying to yourself if you think that animation isn't a big part of what makes certain animated fights great. Now, with the rules out of the way, let's get into some honorable mentions.
Wait, are you talking about the movies or just the shows, man? I wanted to give my prediction for your top 5. Okay, since he hasn't really specified, fuck, I haven't seen the last 2 movies, so I'm guessing he's not going to add any of the movies into his list. But if I was to give, like, right now on the spot, a list of my top 5, at least my favorite My Hero fights, fuck. number one, subjectively, by the way, number one would be season 4's fight between Deku and Overhaul. That's I feel like the first time that My Hero animation started like stepping up, you know. So number one is Deku versus Overhaul. Number two, maybe the season 2 fight between Midoriya and Todoroki. That was a really cool fight. What else? What else? Just good fights, man. Season 3's Deku versus like Muscular. That was a really good fight. One of my favorites as well. I'm trying to think of fights that other characters have had that I think I might have enjoyed, because I feel like I'll start listing off every single one Midoriya has been in, and that's not what I want to do. Who else gets really cool fights? I mean, it'd be hard to mention this list without mentioning the All Might versus All For One season 3, right? Okay, last one, and we can continue with the video. I'll go Deku versus Bakugo. So that's my list. Deku versus Overhaul, Deku versus Todoroki, All Might versus All For One. What are these last two? Anyway, you can play that back the video to watch the last two. So let's hear
Because these
next
honorable
list.
mentions not being on the list would probably get me crucified. Now listen, I think we can all agree that MHA's 8th and final season is one of, if not its greatest.
Oh, I forgot the ones from the last season. Deku versus shit. No, let me start again. If we're counting the last season as well, Bakugo versus All For One. I don't think the Deku versus Shigaraki fight was all that like good choreography wise, but for him, since he's basing his list off emotional weight and animation, I guess you can give like the Deku versus Shigaraki fight one as well. But I think the Bakugo versus All For One fight was the best fight in that season, so I guess that one can supersede all mine and go to number one, and then the list follows just like that.
Every single character from this wide branching story is coming back together in the culmination of hundreds of chapters of effort. And more than that, in both the manga and the anime, we're served some of the most emotionally hard-hitting, well-drawn or well-animated fights that we have ever seen in MHA, as every hero in Japan collectively scrambles to try to stop either Shigaraki or All For One. And thus, when talking about the final battle against All For One or Shigaraki, we're talking about fights that span over the course of almost 2 full seasons of MHA. And thus I feel as though saying the final battle against All For One or Shigaraki as an individual fight and putting it on this list is kind of cheating. And rather, if I was going to look at these long-lasting battles between the heroes of Japan, Shigaraki and All For One, I would look at individual moments from them and consider those individual moments fights of their own. Like Bakugo versus Shigaraki on the floating tombstone.
This was
Nejire,
also
Sun
really
Eater,
good
Lemillion
fight.
versus Shigaraki. Class 1A versus
This was all in
All
season
For
7.
One
How did I
slash
forget all these
Shigaraki,
fights?
and so on and so forth. But honestly, if any of those individual moments in these
I can remember that scene of like Bakugo getting up with the blood falling on like the leaves and him walking towards Shigaraki, man, that was so fucking
drawn
cool.
out battles were to make our top 10 list for the greatest fights in anime history, it would have to be either Iron Might versus All For One or Revived Bakugo versus All For One. 2 fights that, even though they only exist as a small slice of the long drawn out battle against All For One, exemplifying not only the will of the heroes of Japan to do everything they possibly can to gain victory, but also perfectly display the desperation of this moment. Both of these fights are incredible for their own specific reason.
Yeah, All Might versus... That was a really cool fight.
Like an hour and a half since that last clip, because I had to go over to the house we're building, and they were like, oh, well, do you want this wall here? What about this window? Where does this window go? That window's gonna cost you $10,000. And then, whoop-de-doo, Nick's proposing on Friday to his lovely girlfriend. Everyone congratulate me in the comments. Don't tell her, and the couple that was supposed to be going on a double date with us in order to obscure the fact that I was proposing to her just broke up. So now I gotta find a new professional photographer friend who also happens to be in a relationship to masquerade on a fake double date with. And oh yeah, I got Danny's puppy because their dog walker lost their other dog. Now I love Penelope, I literally raised her, but still it's consideration. But if you do live in the East Hollywood area and you've seen a dog who looks like this, please DM the Instagram account Ava Did a Bark. Anyways, what are we talking about? Anime or some stupid like that? Oh yeah, All for One Fights Season 8, some of the greatest anime I've ever seen. Of course, how could I forget? We can't put this video out on Thursday. You'll tell her. I know you'll tell her. Now it's got to go out on Saturdays because you guys have loose lips. Anyways, both of the fights that we see against the slowly de-aging All for One in Season 8 are some of the greatest fights we've ever seen in MHA. Whether it was Iron Mite using his combination of his Iron Man suit and his Batmobile to tap into the power of the quirks of every single one of the members of Class 1A, to rage bait All for One into a fight that had no benefit for him, or Bakugo being a legitimate menace brought back to life by Headshot using the pain he feels throughout the entirety of his body and all of his body's sweat pores to propel himself at speeds we've never seen before. Both of these fights have such incredible moments. Whether it's Bakugo skipping across freeways, catching up with All for One even though All for One has a massive lead on him while cackling while crashing through buildings, or All Might's smile never fading as he realizes that even though he may die in this battle against All for One, he's accomplishing what he set out to do, which is set him back further in the de-aging process. Both of these fights are not only incredibly emotionally weighted, but also probably some of the best animated fights we've ever seen in MHA. However, because they're just a small part of a long drawn-out process trying to stop All for One, I can't really consider them in good faith alongside standalone fights that have a clear beginning and ending, and a clear victor and loser. I mean, yes, All Might is the loser of his battle against All for One, and Bakugo is the winner in his battle against All for One, but those two fights are just a couple of pages in the long book of trying to stop the new All for One from reaching Shigaraki. But if you wanted to consider either of these fights as a top 10 MHA fight, I could not hold that against you. I would say that Bakugo versus All for One is maybe top 5, and Iron Mite versus All for One is probably like top 7. But for the purposes of today's video, we're not going to be including them. And thus, let's get to our first entry, or our number 10 spot, because coming up at number 10, ranking the greatest fights in MHA.
Hey, let's fucking go. Okay, I didn't guess the top 5, but at least one of my guesses, or some of them, should be on the top 10 list that he has. I'm not too mad at top 10. I'm not too mad because there's a lot more fights in the show that I forgot about. There's like Dabi versus Todoroki, you know, Shigaraki versus what's the guy's name from Redestro? I like that fight. So there's a lot. Miracle versus like guys in.
When people think about this fight, they probably just think about the moment where Todoroki's hand becomes a blob of red and orange light, and Deku flying past a bunch of ice as Cemento.
This is one of my favorite fights in the entire show. I think on the list that I made, it should have been like number 2, right?
Getting absolutely diced into a billion gajillion little cubes.
Peak
while
fiction.
that moment is obviously the most important moment from Deku versus Todoroki, which happened during the sports festival arc, what a lot of people forget about this fight is what it meant to not only Deku, but also Todoroki. So heading into this fight, we kind of begin to get the backstory on Todoroki, and at this moment in time, Todoroki only uses his ice powers. For the entirety of his life, his ice powers are really all that he needed because his ice powers were crazy powerful. However, because of Deku's ability to blow away Todoroki's ice by breaking his fingers, eventually, even though one of Deku's arms gets frozen, Deku pushes Todoroki to the point where his body gets so cold that he can barely use his ice any longer. And thus Deku, even though he wanted to win in this fight, encourages Todoroki to use his left side, his fire. And thus Todoroki does exactly that, finding a way for the first ever time to combine both his fire and ice abilities.
It looked so cool to see for the first time.
By using his ice and cool himself down from the heat caused by his fire. And this is such a cool moment from Todoroki because it's him acknowledging the fact that even though he gets his abilities from Endeavor, using them doesn't mean he has to forgive Endeavor. And it's really good looking into who
it's yours, your quirk, not his. Peak.
Who is his character, because the only thing more important to him than winning was making sure that Todoroki was living up to his potential. So tie that all into the fact that this was the fight that made us all realize, oh, this show's getting budget. And yeah, I believe even though it is a relatively brief fight,
nobody can argue with that.
Deserves a spot on our top 10 list. But enough about the boys, let's get to the girls, because coming up at number 9 on our list, ranking all the greatest fights at MHA, we have Uchaku versus Toga. Specifically, the last time they did it. Now, unfortunately, on account of the fact that this is a fight from Season 7, it's not a fight that's all that visually impressive. However, what this fight lacks in terms of animation, it makes up for an emotional weight. See, Toga and Uchaku are kind of in this perpetual spiral around each other. Toga is obsessed with Deku, Uchaku, and a little bit of Froppy, but mostly Uchaku, at least by the end. And there's this constant conversation around Toga as a character where we basically explore how quirks affect how certain people are raised. We explore Toga's relationship with Twice, her sorrow at the fact that she isn't able to use his quirk to the fullest of its ability because she has hatred in her heart. We learn from Toga's backstory that nobody ever accepted her on account of the fact that when she was obsessed with something or somebody, she wanted to drink their blood. A reaction that nobody was accepting of on account of the fact that it was counteractive to how most humans showed affection. However, and the fight really begins to take a turn for the worst, at least for the good guys, when Uchaku is stabbed in the stomach by Toga. However, even after Toga stabs Uraraka tells Toga, and is probably the first person to ever tell Toga that she loves her smile, that she sees it as pure, and it's so radiant that Uraraka was jealous of it. And thus, for the first time in Toga's life, she feels as though she's being accepted by somebody. Because her entire life she's been told her smile is incredibly creepy. And thus, even when Toga has an opportunity to kill Uraraka as they fall from the sky after Twice's ability fades from Toga, we instead get a heartfelt moment where Toga's telling Uraraka about how she falls in love too easily. And the fight ends with the two of them sitting side by side, but Uraraka's lost too much blood. And thus Toga, in order to make sure that the girl that she's in love with, Uraraka, can survive, gives her blood over to Uraraka, thus losing her own life. And this moment becomes all the more powerful when you see what it does to Uraraka in the epilogue. As we see Uraraka blame herself for being stabbed, blame herself for being the reason that Toga had to die. And honestly, anytime I watch anything to do with this fight, be it Uraraka's reaction or the fight itself, I well up. And thus, to me, this is a top 10 fight in the show, specifically the 9th best. But unfortunately, the lack of any real, fighting in this fight makes it fall short of our number 8 spot. Because coming up at number 8 on our list, ranking the greatest fights in all of MHA,
let's go. We're going
Deku versus
2 for 2,
Listen,
2 for 5, 5 for 2.
This is one
Let's
of,
go.
if not my favorite fight in all of MHA, but I
It was
understand
so
it's not
fucking
the
cool,
best fight in all of
man.
MHA. Mostly maybe because I believe Season 3 is probably the best season of MHA, but I also just love
That's a pretty strong thing to say, Nick. I don't know if I agree with you on that. There's Season 4, you know.
Grow a ton of muscles was kind of at this moment in time the perfect villain for Deku, a power type with near infinite regeneration who was able to outpower Deku even when he was using 100% of One for All. But outside of
This is so
the
fucking
fight
cool, man.
itself, Deku trying to stand his ground and hold off
Yeah, and then Kota spills the water and then he gets back up and
to save that one
bro.
kid with the weird hat is so incredible. The Japanese voice acting in this movie is nuts.
Daiki did a
Because
really cool
Deku
job.
absolutely decimating his right arm, trying to hold off Muscular, while this big amorphous ball of muscle shoves Deku into the ground. And there's tears streaming down Deku's face as he realizes he's going to die. But after Kota, that's the kid with the weird hat, splashes Muscular with water, and Muscular says, "You wait a second, I'll kill you later," Deku fights his way up the ground, and Detroit smashes Muscular back into a wall, winning the fight. And yes, like a lot of the other fights on this list thus far, this fight is a little bit short, which is why it's this low on the
I think
list.
he let out a scream,
Man,
the scream he did from Season 1.
Apologizing to All Might and his mom while being crushed into the earth and realizing, oh, I'm gonna die here, I've made mistakes. But understanding that he can't die until Kota is protected. And that's what makes Deku such an incredible character. And it's moments like this that make that side of him
My
shine.
fucking
But
goat,
about all these
bro.
one-on-one fights, what about a group fight? Because coming up at number 7 on our list ranking the greatest fights in MHA.
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
I
the
guess you
Stain
could count
fight,
this one, too.
specifically Deku, Todoroki, and Ida versus Stain. This fight is kind of our first preview into the desperate fighting style of Class 1A against superior opponents. Stain is a legitimate threat to high-level pro heroes, like Ida's older brother, Ingenium. And yet, even though Stain is able to cut down some of the greatest heroes in Japanese society, 3 first first year students in Ida, Deku, and Todoroki have to battle it out with him in hopes of getting him arrested. And things don't go well. All three of them at some point are slashed by Stain and have their blood licked by him, freezing them immediately. And while usually one of them isn't frozen, that one person isn't strong enough to hold off Stain by themselves. Even Todoroki, who at this moment in time is using both the fire and ice of his quirk. And thus his fight does such a good job at illustrating the fact that there is levels to villainy in the My Hero Academia world, and that these kids might be out of their depth, even the most powerful amongst them. And yet, even though they are desperately struggling against Stain, when the three of them work together, they
Loki
stand
kind of forgot
how
they won this fight. It's been a real long time since I watched
engines so that he can use Reciprocal Burst again to close the distance between him and Stain, or Deku using full cowling in its earliest stages to be able to jump up to Stain's location, and both of them being reliant on Todoroki launching them up with ice. These three, who had never really worked together in any capacity, find a perfect synergy that allows them to land one of the best double shots in all of MHA, with Deku clocking Stain in the face and Ida kicking him in the abdomen. But even after Stain has been knocked out cold and tied up by all the pro heroes that showed up, when Deku is snapped up by a flying Nomu after the fight, Stain frees himself, freezes the Nomu, kills it, and technically saves
that shit was
Deku. He
cool.
then
That
stares
shit was
down
cool.
an entire
That shit was
army
cool. I
of pro
remember that.
heroes and says, "The only man who I'll ever let kill me is All Might," and strikes fear into the soul of every single person there. But fortunately for them,
That was so
he's
fucking hard.
unconscious. But enough about multiple heroes needing to team up to take down one villain. What about the inverse? Because coming up at number 6 on our list, ranking MHA's greatest fights,
okay, I
we
didn't
have
really say it
Mirko
first,
versus the
but
high-end Nomu. Listen,
yeah,
there are very few
this
heroes
is a
in
really
the
cool
entirety
fight.
of MHA
I
who
fucking
be able
love
to
Mirko.
fight one-on-one against one high-end Nomu. Mirko fights 4. Oh, well, technically trying to get to Dr. Graki before he can save Shigaraki.
Yeah,
and thus,
Endeavor
while her
was like
attention
struggling against
technically
one,
elsewhere,
bro.
and she was trying
The Endeavor fight. Yeah, I forgot about the Endeavor fight. So I can add the Endeavor fight to the list as well. Endeavor versus like that normal or the Prominence burn. Like, he goes plus ultra at the end. Oh, cool as shit. I think that has to be on this list. It has to be. It's going to be criminal if Nick doesn't add that to this list.
To pulverize her left arm to the point where she had to have it replaced, but she didn't let that stop her. She then gets away from 3 high-end awakened Nomus who stab her multiple times as she's sprinting away. Still able to achieve her goal of destroying the tube that Shigaraki was being kept in. Now, yes, eventually Shigaraki is able to come back to life, but that's not Mirko's fault, even though in the process she's literally stabbed through the Achilles. This fight is sick. Any fight Mirko is involved in is sick. I love her. She gets the number 6 spot. But unfortunately for Mirko, she's not the main character of the story, and thus she doesn't make the top 5. But Deku does, because coming up at number 5 on our list, ranking the greatest fights in all of MHA,
my favorite has to be, I think it is my favorite. This had to be the first one that I listed when I was naming mine. Deku versus Overhaul is so fucking cool, man.
This fight,
Not even like the fight. I feel like my favorite like scene from that entire fight is like the Yusei run playing in the background, Eri jumping off the platform that she was on, and like Deku reaching out to her, and like the score of, I think that was the first time we heard that different rendition of Yusei run. It just sounded so fucking good.
is
Shit,
long,
man.
and for good reason. It's Deku versus the final boss of season 4, and that final boss is one of the craziest yet coolest quirks in all of MHA.
His character
Overhaul
design was
allows
also
for him to
just really
deconstruct
cool.
and reconstructs anything that he's touching. Now this fight features a little bit of everything. Deku flies in to save the day as Lemillion's about to die. Deku battles it out with Overhaul in a big old room made out of
changes
spikes,
like
while
Night
Night Eye
Eye's
yells out exactly
view
what
of like
Overhaul's about to
Destiny
do
and shit
using
like
his
that.
future sight ability. We get Night Eye with his purple eye bobbing and weaving all the attacks from a four-armed Overhaul. At least, you know, for a little bit, until he's pierced through the abdomen and the arm by Overhaul spikes. But in this moment, we get a really
What I
cool
will say is that like I wish we got to see more of Night Eye's fight, because he barely like did anything in this fight against Overhaul. He hit him with a couple like pins and shit like that, but none of it really did anything to Chisaki. We just like cut and he had like stab wounds and shit like that. So Night Eye, even though the people didn't like Night Eye, I like Night Eye. I think his role in teaching Deku that he didn't have to like follow a certain, you know, plan or something like that, and he had the ability to change his own destiny and shit like that. This is what I liked about Night Eye's like part of the story. So shout out to Night Eye.
Cool conversation around the concept of fate through Night Eye, who believed his entire life that the predictions he saw using his quirk were absolute, begging with the last vestiges of his life. First quirk to show him a future where Deku and Lemillion make it out of this cave with Eri alive. All while Deku struggles mightily against Overhaul by himself as Lemillion limps away with Eri. But just when things looked their grimmest, as Eri is walking back to Overhaul saying,
man.
listen, I'll go back with you. Just don't kill Lemillion, don't kill Night Eye, don't kill Deku. Deku rips spikes out of his body and says, I know you don't believe in me right now, but I will protect you. And thus, with one of the most beautiful musical backings we've ever heard in MHA, Eri flies into Deku's arms, clambers onto his back, activates her quirk, and allows Deku to use one for all and 100% for a continued amount of time. And thus, Deku is able to battle at the fullest of his ever hypothetical.
That was the first time we got to see him use one for all 100%.
Overhaul with 10 arms and infinite regeneration, but Deku's able to power through that by throwing a wall of fists at him, blows him away in incredible detail. This fight has everything. It has Deku tapping into power we've never seen before. It's the final battle in an incredible season. It's well animated. It has the emotional weight of Deku saving Eri, and it ends with one of the only deaths in MHA, with Night Eye passing away. It's a fight that just has everything, which is why I believe it deserves our number 5 spot. But does it have a prominence burn? No.
Yeah, talk about the Endeavor fight. Talk about the
Endeavor versus an awakened high-end Nomu. Unfortunately, this fight gets a little bit slept on because it's a point in MHA that's not a lot of people's favorite. All Might has already been taken out of story after his final
like season 6, right?
And Endeavor
should have been season 6 or season early season 7.
Hero. However, honestly, I think that's what makes this fight so great for me. Endeavor finally has what he's always wanted, to become Japan's #1 hero. However, he earns that title at the least opportune time ever, stepping into the gigantic shoes of All Might while the world was falling to pieces. And the first real obstacle he comes across while trying to take on the moniker of Japan's #1 hero is Hood, this awakened high-end Nomu. And it doesn't go well. Endeavor is ragdolled by Hood as he destroys entire buildings with their fight.
Such a cool fight,
this fight is a classic MHA fight in that at some point Endeavor turns into a hot ball of lava that melts his surroundings, and everything that gets destroyed gets killed.
That's Hell Spider, like,
beautifully animated and
we never really got to see a lot of Endeavor's kit. Like, he's like, him using his quirk, like, in a cool way, in a cool fight. But I feel like this fight really showed us Endeavor's like bag, you know. He was pulling out tricks we've never seen before. The Hell Spider looked cool. The Prominence Burn. I think there was a couple more stuff that he did. I've just forgotten like the names for his finishing moves, but it was cool. It was cool.
Displaying exactly how much stress falls onto the shoulders of the #1 hero. This fight also allows us to see for pretty much the first ever time the true peak of Hawks' power. And yet even with both Hawks and Endeavor pushing themselves to their absolute maxes, with Endeavor hitting Hood with a Prominence Burn point blank, it's still not enough. And Hood is able to permanently disfigure Endeavor, giving him his iconic facial scar. And thus, for a moment, it appears as though that the new #1 hero won't be able to protect Japan. But even though Endeavor's unable to move his body, he propels himself with heat, and Hawks is able to use his feathers to push Endeavor along, until eventually Endeavor's able to get his hands on Hood, fly him into the atmosphere, and launch a plus ultra prominence burn.
If
you've never heard this moment in Japanese, it's one of the best voice acting deliveries I've ever heard. You think I'm joking? I just rewatched it. I have goosebumps. And the result of this fight is so important because Endeavor proves to Japan in this moment of massive uncertainty, I am here and you are safe because of that. It's awesome. I love it. I don't like Endeavor as a character. I'm not necessarily on the forgiveness side, but this scene is sick.
I like
but because
Endeavor
for a lot
as a
of people,
character.
because it was Endeavor who they don't like, this fight doesn't hold as much emotional weight to them, which is why it didn't make the top 3. But you know what did make the top 3? A fight between the two main characters of this story, Deku and Bakugo. Because coming up at number 3 on our list, we're ranking the greatest fights in all of MHA. We have Deku
an MHA
versus
fan or
Bakugo.
am I not?
This to me is one of the most important fights in all of MHA. Sure, Deku and Bakugo aren't trying to kill each other, but this fight matters so much for both Bakugo and Deku, because both of them look up to each other so much that the vision of each other have become their idea of victory. Bakugo in Deku's mind has always been more powerful than him, a goal to be achieved, while Bakugo has always been jealous of Deku's ability to throw himself headlong into any problem he wants to solve. And this fight's terrifying for Bakugo because Deku stands a chance in it. And Bakugo's lived his entire life knowing that Deku's below him in terms of hierarchical standing. But what makes this fight special isn't Bakugo's fear. It's the choreography and cleverness in combat that MHA is so known for. See, by far and away, one of the best parts of MHA is watching somebody who probably shouldn't win in a fight either come close to win or win because they outthink their stronger opponent.
Like Deku to stand that much of a fight.
Will take the bait and try to use his air superiority to win the fight up there so that Deku can bait Bakugo into believing that he's coming in for a kick, but in actuality hit him with a 5% punch. It's moments like those that make MHA such an incredible superhero story. You don't have to be the strongest to win, you just have to know how to use your strengths better than the other person. But outside of how emotionally hard-hitting this fight is, it's also got some of the craziest choreography in the entirety of
that
MHA.
Kick spin, like, and then he kicks Bakugo and like the electricity like touches his face. Oh,
whether it's Deku hitting the Dempsey shuffle, doing a little roll and trying to axe kick Bakugo, or Bakugo after getting right crossed, grabbing Deku by the arm, flipping him upside down in the air, and exploding himself from above, propelling Deku into the ground. This fight was a
also one of the smartest characters in the show, which they said it a lot more.
Action. And thus, for all those reasons, I do genuinely believe that this fight is the third best in all of MHA. But it's not quite
those. I think he's used already 4 of the 5 that I gave so far. He hasn't mentioned 041 versus All Might, so that has to be either 1 or number 2 on this list. Not Iron Might, but I meant like All Might when he used the last Embers for 1 for All. I'm pretty sure that has to be the second one or the first one in the show. Fuck, he hasn't mentioned All Might in season 1 versus Normal. Could those two be the last?
A fight that features a name we've already heard on this list, because coming up at number 2 on our list of MHA's greatest fights, we have Lemillion versus Overhaul. Now listen, I know I already talked about on this list Deku versus Overhaul.
Come on, Nick. Really?
I was talking about Deku versus Overhaul.
I mean, if you're talking about emotional importance, I guess it was cool.
Overhaul, I'm not counting. These are objectively
that was also a really good episode. The Lemillion episode, just that one in general.
See, because while both Lemillion and Deku were fighting against Overhaul.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not hating on Mirio. We love Mirio over here, but like number 2. Like, come on, I wouldn't put Half-Fight on number 2.
Lemillion, before he even gets to fight against Overhaul, has to fight against the guy who can force him to answer any questions he asks, who also has a gun, and against the guy who's simply being next to makes you feel like you're drunk. And over the course of fighting against these two, they're trying to make it clear to Lemillion that not only will he not be able to save Eri, that'll be dying down here in these underground tunnels. And Lemillion, who's kind of in a transitional period of believing in himself as a hero in the first place, has to battle against the idea that Eri may not be amongst the million people that he wants to save. However, he's able to overcome this, and we begin to see what Lemillion's quirk looks like at the highest possible level. As he flies to the wall,
even when he lost even when he lost his quirk, he was still willing to fight. That's one thing I like about Mirio.
Tunnel like a ghost and makes himself solid just in time to clothesline his enemies. And winning these fights is so incredibly important to Lemillion because he's the reason that Eri went back into the arms of Overhaul. He let her run back to Overhaul. He had an opportunity to save her, and now he needed to make up for that sin. And eventually Lemillion is able to get his hands on Eri, and thus is tasked with the incredibly difficult task of defeating Overhaul and his right-hand man in combat while making sure that Eri isn't hurt, which is made especially difficult by the fact that Overhaul doesn't care if Eri is hurt because he can just put her back together. Even if she dies, he can resuscitate her. And the only reason that Lemillion doesn't win this incredibly uphill battle is because Demoto points a gun at Eri and is going to shoot her with a quirk erasure bullet, forcing Lemillion to allow himself to be hit by the bullet and not using his permeation ability, leading to his quirk being erased. But after Lemillion, who's wanted to be a hero his entire life, has his quirk stripped away from him, he keeps fighting, shattering Overhaul's right arm with a punch after closing the distance after being shot. And he battles on against Overhaul in what is admittedly kind of a slideshow fight. I just rewatched it and I forgot that it's kind of really heavy on the slideshowy aspects. Until eventually he's able to fight no longer, being pierced through the abdomen with a spike. And while this fight may not be the prettiest or the most technically impressive, it is to me the most shining moment of actual heroism in all of MHA. A kid who wanted to be a hero his entire life so bad that he threw away his quirk to protect a child. And even while quirkless continued to battle to save that child, even if it meant the loss of his own life, that will never not be incredibly moving to me. And for that, I
Shout out
put
to
it as
Mirio.
a number 2 spot. After rewatching that fight, I feel less confident about that.
Yeah, bro,
Nick,
that's
it
what I was
stuck in your
talking
head
about.
for a long time when you were writing the list because you remember the emotional weight of the moment, not because it is largely a slideshow fight. And the years it's been since I've seen that fight, I animated all the movement. And you know what? That's got to count for something. But what happens when you take the emotional weight of that moment and actually give it really good animation?
He has to be talking about the All for One and All Might fight.
Well,
he
we
has
got
to
our number
be.
1 spot, because coming up at number 1 on our list of ranking MHA's greatest fights, we have All
I wouldn't be
Might
mad at
versus
that.
All for
I
One.
wouldn't be
This
mad
fight
at
is
that.
the
It was such a good
definition
fight.
of a watershed moment in My Hero Academia. All Might, who we've known has been constantly waning in strength up until this moment, digs deep inside himself and embodies the spirit of Plus Ultra to stoke the final ember of One for All that he has left in a battle against his rival, the man who had crippled him with a punch to the ribs that had taken away his power. But how is All Might, who was barely able to win against the Nomu, gonna win against All for One? Well, with hard work, determination, and putting his back into it. But even that doesn't seem to be enough, because even though All Might smashes All for One in the ground and shatters his breathing apparatus, he's blown back away from All for One, and when the smoke settles, we see All Might is back to Small Might. And yet, even though All Might can muster is strengthening his right arm, everybody
he still
watching
does
on
the pose.
cheers for him
He
as
still
he
does the
clashes with the
pose.
combined quirk factors of All for One so hard that his arm begins to shatter and bleed. After which he shifts his weight, slides over, hits All for One with a left uppercut, and then focuses all of his strength once again into his now purple
didn't
and
put my
broken
back
arm,
into it.
reminiscent of Deku's arm every single time he
Peak
tried to
fucking
use
cinema.
One for All,
Peak
and
fucking
screams
cinema.
at the top of his lungs, United States of Smash! Delivering
Come
one
on,
of the most
Nick.
quotable lines in the history of anime. And while this wasn't the end for All for One, Small Might staying standing amongst the smoke and using this opportunity to point towards the camera, letting Japan know that it was their turn to take the brunt of the work to keep
But we all know who he
protected,
was
but
talking
in
to. That's why I
actuality,
fucking love
telling
that fucking
Deku that it was
moment.
his turn, to me, is
Yeah.
not only one of the most iconic MHA moments of all time, but one of the most iconic anime moments of all time. And for those reasons and so many more, All Might versus All for One is the number 1 best fight in all of MHA. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What do you believe is the best fight in MHA? And what would your top 10 look like? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell.
Yeah, that was Nick's top 10 MHA fights. I guess all the 5 that I mentioned were on his list, so I'm pretty happy with that. If you guys have any disagreements or agreements with me, either me or Nick, let me know down in the comment section below. You can like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell as well. And yeah, we're gonna be reacting to more of Nick's videos if you guys like the anime content and stuff like that. So let me know, and we'll react to more anime content. Yeah, peace.